Hello, I'm Michael Swanson. I write stock market commentary on my website, wallstreetwindow.com. I'm an author and a historian. My latest book is titled The War State. Well, the country right now is going through a tough time economically. People have lost their jobs. There's inflation. Gas prices are going up. You feel it every time you go to the gas tank. You see, we've been going through a debt-driven financial crisis since the NASDAQ bubble popped in 2000. The Fed lowered interest rates then as a result of that bust, but as a side effect created a real estate bubble. When it burst, the banks went under in 2008. The federal government then printed $1 billion in debt to bail them out, and now we have a growing government spending and treasury bond debt bubble as a consequence. Now, most people know that. You know that the federal budget needs to be balanced, or we're headed for an even bigger crisis that involves dollar devaluation, skyrocketing inflation, and a sharp jump up in interest rates. Now, all that would cause everyone's living standards to fall again, just like they've already dropped as a result of the 2008 bust. Be another leg down. Now, people know we need to do something to prevent that. You know it. But what most people don't realize is the harm that military spending is having on the economy. You see, when you factor in the interest on the national debt from past wars and total current defense expenditures, the United States is spending almost 40% of its budget on all this stuff. We're doing what all empires in history have done before they collapsed, and that is we're overextending ourselves for empire and to the detriment of internal stability. Our national security elites and defense companies are running amok, spending billions of dollars on weapons that have no use in the wars of insurgency the United States is currently involved in. It used to cost the U.S. government $46 million to buy an F-16. Now it spends $150 million to buy one single F-22 fighter jet with so many problems with it that it needs constant repairs and isn't even being used in our wars right now. I believe we are approaching a true turning point in our country in which we must do something about the cost of empire or else suffer the consequences. The only way we can get the budget deficit cut is to cut some of these expenses. And the best way for people to understand what is happening is learn how we got where we are, where it all began. You see, before World War II, the United States spent almost nothing on national defense, and hardly anyone paid any income taxes. You can't have big wars and big defense budgets without big government. We had big wars, of course, before World War II. There was a Civil War, World War I, and two of them. But after all of them, the country demobilized. People went home. But after World War II, we kept the war machine in place, and in the name of fighting the Cold War, and even when the Cold War came to an end, we didn't demobilize. So today, the biggest employer in the world is the U.S. Defense Department with 3 million employees. The picture on the cover of my book is a photo of President Dwight Eisenhower when he gave his farewell address to the nation, in which he warned of the dangers of the military-industrial complex to American democracy and the American economy.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. We now stand 10 years past the midpoint of a century that has witnessed 4 major wars among great nations. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes.
The first half of my book is about the origins of the military-industrial complex in the Cold War and what caused President Dwight Eisenhower to give this warning. The rest of the book focuses on the presidency of John Kennedy and looks at the impact all these changes since World War II and his presidency had on the flow of power in the United States when it comes to foreign policy decision-making. The real decision-making became more centralized until what one of Kennedy's advisors, a fellow named Arthur Schlesinger, called a permanent government inside the federal government formed. Now, the sociologist C. Wright Mills called this the power elite in the 1950s. So that's what the phrase you see on the title of the book comes from. These people aren't a secret. We're talking about an interlocking iron triangle group of the top politicians, leaders of our largest corporations, and members of the federal government bureaucracy. When it comes to foreign policy, you're looking at the defense lobbyists, the generals in the military, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the leaders of the intelligence community. You're talking about people like Michael Hayden, who is the director of the CIA, is now getting paid millions of dollars to lobby for the NSA spying. These people are treated like celebrities and experts on television when they got their own axes to grind. They tend to move in and out of government in the corporate world and see things the same way. What is important, though, is that as the size of the government grew during World War II, and the national security bureaucracy as we came to know it today came into being, that's when the Pentagon was built, that's when the CIA was created, that's when it all started. You see, that's when the people who stacked it all at the top started to stay in place while the presidents came and went. That's what President Kennedy's aide meant when he referred to a permanent government. This gave these people a tremendous amount of power. So today, really, the judgment of the members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the head of the NSA, and Obama's national security team are really more important than Obama's own individual opinions are when he makes his decisions. He really just follows their lead. I really can't point to one single thing Obama has done when it comes to foreign policy decisions that came from his own head. I can't think of anything he's done that's bucked the national security consensus or the establishment. Nothing. If there was another president, I don't think anything would be different. What's funny, though, is today, when the things are really going on, the decisions are really being hidden from us. And they're all being decided behind the scenes. They aren't on the news. We still really don't know why Bush went to war in Iraq. You have to go back and study the records of the past to understand how things really work and why the United States engages in so many of these wars. For example, we have recorded conversations of the most critical meetings President Kennedy held for the Cuban Missile Crisis, so we can understand how that unfolded and why Kennedy made the decisions he did and what he was up against when he made them. We got all sorts of released documentation of the era. We got a lot of material I put together in this book so people can really understand how things work in Washington. You don't have that when it comes to current events like you do for the first few decades of the Cold War era. To understand those times, you don't have to speculate. It's all right there. So it makes for some real fascinating stuff to learn from. And now the cost of empire is starting to impact our daily lives in a sluggish economy, even though most people don't even realize the real reasons we're suffering. This book can help you understand what is going on and why. Yes, just go to Amazon.com and type The War State at the search bar and the book will pop up. Now, thanks for letting me tell you about the book, and I'm confident that once you read it, you'll like it. I even got some humorous stories in there, even though this has been a pretty serious video. In fact, if you would, after you read the book, tell other people about it, post a review about it, get the word out, and drop me an email or a note if you like, and we can communicate with each other and keep in touch.